Yeah, Jason.
There are fractals everywhere.
Fractals.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
You're telling me there are things within things.
Things within things.
I just keep dividing down more and more, and it's just an image within an image.
And such is the story.
Such is a story within a story.
This is an interesting agricultural data story.
Yeah.
Now, don't tune us out yet.
No, this is actually quite interesting because from the stance that farming is the equipment used in farming is becoming very, IoT driven, very connected to the net, and it's generating a lot of data. Helps with planning and efficiencies, but there's all things are good things are a double-edged sword. So let's give a little bit of the intro for what is happening, the background with advanced agriculture.
Yeah, so I mean, we all know, and this is a Forbes article, but they're talking about the harvester has been around since the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
We know it's just, sucking up corn, soybeans, other crops.
Yep.
And then in there, these IoT devices are beaming data to its manufacturers as it's moving. It's collecting, not just with GPSs, but it's collecting the volume, the amount that it's, going in there and sucking up. And it's going, what's the spacing between them? What is it per an acre? On a sister machine called a planter, algorithms adjust the distribution of seeds based on which part of the soils have in the past year performed best.
So if the combine's going across the land,
right,
it's pulling up all this data, it's like, ooh, that was a good haul right there, just in that small spot. There must be something good with the soil. So it starts analyzing that data in the crop yield, and then it's like, we need to continue to change the variation, maybe the spacing in the crop in that specific area, so that doing those adjustments, the crop can pull in as much water and nutrients as it needs without sapping out other crops relatively around it.
Yeah, and also the sprayer has an algorithm on it that can recognize a weed and spray it.
Yeah, which is...
So it's like...
Yeah, because you're not walking out in the farm field with a big pump canister and going...
Yeah, for miles and miles.
And just like giving dollars back to Monsanto. And here's what's cool about that. Back in the day, the Austrians came up with this really neat ratio for tree farming. It's called the Faustman ratio. A little bit of a side note. The Faustman ratio told them, okay, the ground, I can only yield so much lumber depending on the acreage and the health of that acreage, right? So there's a ratio between trees planted and acreage space. And if I overplant past a certain threshold on that ratio, yes, I may get a higher yield this year, but it's actually going to deteriorate the land further on, and my yields will continue to drop, even though I saw a nice little spike. So the Austrians realized a long time ago that there's a maintenance of trees, their positioning, and their yield within a specific area and how those are harvested, which I think is really interesting. And you can, point in case, you can use that ratio also in finance to realize how debt erodes the financial markets, but that's a separate thing. But it's interesting. So now...
That's another fractal.
Yeah, it's another fractal. But there are good stories, and I can see that there was some machine learning done giving you an ad there on that thing for the...
Yeah, did you see that?
Yeah. But, that goes a little bit further. So let's talk about those manufacturers real quick.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So you have John Deere, Duluth, and these collect data from all around the world, thanks to ability for these, and the article says bulky machines, which they are, these big
They're
chunks.
big combines. If you go to the large... I've never been to one. I've been next to combines in person. Huge tires, big machines, cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And farmers are like, that's the next thing I got to get because I don't have to be out there. I can just GPS say, this is the property of my land. Combine goes out there and does all the harvesting by itself. So there's one machine that's just generating swaths of data. But this is where things kind of take a little turn. If the farmer's putting in that labor, the farmer spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this machine. Why is the benefit of all the data it generates going back to John Deere?
Yes.
Why does John Deere get to analyze the globe and then make all the profits off that data?
Yeah, exactly.
John Deere didn't do any. They manufactured their thing, but now they're extending beyond that, saying, "Oh, we're just going to dip into what your device is, transmitting."
Yeah, and I think this is the story with the smart farming.
Yeah.
This is the story when we're on this revolution of it becoming so techy. Mm-hmm. Now we have fights over data.
Yeah. And listen, John Deere doesn't need another buck. The farmers need another buck, in all truth. So that data that's being generated, the farmer deserves to own that.
Right.
Okay, if John Deere wants to sell a separate program that says, okay, if you come to us, we'll analyze it for you and give you some feedback. But for John Deere to say that, we own that data, and just because those machines are out there and, it's collecting it, we're doing it on your behalf, that doesn't mean they get control over it.
No. And listen to this. I thought this was interesting. Vice President of Avco, Seth Crawford, said this: "What's been holding us back for a while has been the inability to crunch data fast enough to work at the level of individual plants, as opposed to, say, whole acres or fields." Crawford explained, now with all the technology that's come along and the processing speeds, we're able to operate in much more real time.
Yeah, and that's really cool. They're using that cloud infrastructure to manage that processing for them. And there's no reason those business intelligence tools shouldn't be in the hands of the farmer itself.
Yeah, listen to this. Deere earlier this year, John Deere, created a new rule, that of chief technology officer. The company says that it now views itself as a technology company.
Yeah, of course they do, because they realize how much money is in that data.
Yes.
But that's the farmers.
Well, we don't manufacture tractors anymore.
What are you talking about? Your tractors
technology.
are hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then you're also going to rake the farmers for their data too that they generated.
Yeah.
Don't double dip.
No.
They're deserving of the things they create, and that's their value. That's their asset. You know what it reminds me of? Medical. You go into a hospital, medical devices. So here's a little interesting tidbit. If you like a blood pressure machine, all those things are IoT. They're all hooked up, right?
Right.
But you can't get that medical data because of HIPAA. But what you can do is you can backdoor it. And this is what a lot of manufacturers do. They backdoor all the data saying, oh, we're just doing diagnostic testing. So that means you get all this health data on these people and how the machines are working.
Oh, Lord.
So they've found a way to circumvent HIPAA with diagnostic testing and just ingesting all the data. What do you think they do with that? You don't need all of that to diagnostically test. We know exactly what you're doing. You're scanning all your systems in all the hospitals that they're in, and you're just jacking all that data for free.
Yeah, listen, I mean, we're harping on John Deere, but there's all of the large equipment manufacturers are doing this. But sensitive to suggestions that they're infringing on privacy. The largest equipment makers said they don't share farmers' data with third parties unless farmers give permission.
Yeah, unless the farmer gives
permission.
Click
accept.
Yeah, do this. Yeah, and so what it's saying is you bought the tractor. Oh, you signed up for the John Deere app? You've already given it all away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What
a classic.
And what farmers are worried about is farmers by nature are highly protective of their land and business.
Yeah, they're protective of their land, their business. Listen, they're pushed on pennies.
Right.
So they need every penny they can get. John Deere does not need every penny it can get. And I'm just using them as an example because, they're one of the leaders out there.
Right.
But come on.
Yeah, and it says contracts to buy or rent big machines are many pages long and the language unclear, especially since some of the underlying legal concepts regarding the sharing and collecting of agricultural data are still evolving.
They're farmers, not contract lawyers.
Right. On one 2019 paper puts it, the lack of transparency and clarity around issues such as data ownership, portability, privacy, trust, and liability in the commercial relationships governing smart farming are contributing to farmers' reluctance to engage in the widespread sharing of their farm data that smart farming facilitates.
So if that smart farming is growing and they don't want to share it, there's one way to incentivize a farmer to get it off of their books and onto yours or servers, whatever you want to call it. Farmer goes to TARTLE and you do too. And John Deere buys that data from the farmer.
Right.
Not says we own it because you signed a freaking contract that you couldn't read.
Right.
Yeah,
and I think the collect, aggregation, and the sharing of the data has to be done in a safe manner that benefits humanity. And there's only one way that it gets accomplished.
Yeah, and that's through the model designed through the TARTLE marketplace.
Yes.
It's only for the benefit of both parties.
Tartle.co.
Yeah, .co. Get started. Sign up. Super easy.
So if you're in the ag industry, we'd love to have conversations with you. If you're in the ag industry with data, if you're an executive from John Deere or any of these manufacturers, we'd love to have you come on the podcast. This is really, I like farms just in general.
I love farms.
I love tractors. I love all that. So I would love to get more into this. I think it's a really cool, it's just something that we're seeing. And I would like, a farmer, that has a large farm, I would love to talk with them and kind of get their perspective of what's happening.
Oh, absolutely.
And kind of see, that would be great.
And then once you educate them on the benefit that's available,
yes,
like look at all this data you're generating, this is extremely valuable.
Yes.
And maybe through some sort of analysis, if these larger outfits are analyzing all these farmers, maybe they're like, they can go to the farmers and like, would you all be interested in like coalescing together, like coming together? Because we've seen there's efficiencies if there's a combination of your efforts.
Yeah, and we will probably by the end of this week. Today's January the 4th.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have and I want to make sure we mention this to our people. If you want to communicate with Alex and I, you could send us an email at podcast
at tartle.co. You can comment on YouTube. We respond to everything, and we'll probably even make a direct video if you ask for it.
Yeah, and but if you're a farmer, if you're into data, especially ag data, we would love to be able to bring you on the show. We could just call you.
Yeah.
So just podcast at tartle.co. Drop us a little note.
Tartle.co.
Or if you know somebody that's an expert in a data industry and you'd like to have them on the show, we'd love to have a talk with you.
Yeah, listen, and we're not going to go easy on you. Not at all.
Farmer, we promise we won't get into the rainforest discussion.
Yeah, no rainforest
We're going to talk about
discussion.
data.
Yeah, we'll talk just about data.
And what I want to see what their perspective is, the farmer's perspective is.
I would love that.
If they realize what type of data they're giving.
Yeah, we have our own perspective.
Right.
But maybe they don't have a perspective. We open them up to it and they're like, crap.
Yeah.
You know?
Start a movement. I love that.
A farmer movement.
Take back your data, people.
Hold on. What was that? What was that movement? The sagebrush rebellion. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. Something happens with farmers. Farmers are interesting.
Yeah. I love them.
Yeah. Well, thanks guys for the food. Appreciate it.
Yep.